this one's just fun, interesting, cool stuff, right? The Bionic Man. And the Bionic Man, it's becoming a reality. We have sensors being integrated into prosthetics and assistive technology into wearables. We have mind control. It's real, and I'm just excited about it. And so we thought, well, this is the year to do it. So I want to introduce to you Dan Munro, who is a contributor at Forbes, who I've now known for a couple years and is amazing. And I asked everyone for a motto. And Dan just didn't send one to me. So I said I was going to make one up. And so this is it. My name's Dan Munro, and I'm kind of a big deal. And he is.
And my retort to that is that we're here in Vegas, so pretty much everybody's a winner, right?
Yes.
So thanks a lot, Jill. So this is the panel on the Bionic Man. And I don't know how many people here had a chance to get to the Robots on the Runway event last night. Because that was pretty phenomenal. And in fact, we're going to have a demonstration to some extent of that in a similar way here today. But the stories behind these are what I try and get to. And of course, the story last night was Paul Thatcher, who was the man injured, spinal cord injury, and demonstrated the exoskeleton device, which now enables him to walk. And these are the kinds of stories that are really life-altering. So that's the kind of panel this represents, and it's really on the leading edge of where technology is getting integrated in very detailed and very specific ways to help manage conditions that are typically horrific. So the panel here for that, I'll let them take 2 to 3 minutes to introduce themselves, and then we'll have some questions. But first up is Steve, and representing I want to say AlterG.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's the actual device.
So this is
or one of them, one of the two.
So do you want me to take a second now to do the
Please
quick
do.
introduction? So I'm Steve Basta, I'm CEO of AlterG. We're a privately held medical device company up in the Bay Area. And we have 2 basic technologies. The company was formed, and the name will make sense to you in a minute. The company was formed around a technology for creating an anti-gravity treadmill, hence AlterG, changing the force of gravity. The anti-gravity treadmill is a device that will unweight a user to allow them to walk or run at a fraction of their body weight. It's a mobility solution that allows people to improve their rehab and recover the ability to walk. We recently introduced our second technology, which is our bionic leg, that is also designed as an aid to help people be able to regain the ability to walk when they've lost muscle strength. So the first technology is really around reducing impact. The second technology really around compensating for weakness. And my own background, I've been in the medical device business for 20 years, and in the last 10 years in the aesthetic side of the medical device business, really sort of thinking about medical devices introduced in the consumer marketplace. And we're looking at our technologies in the same way, at how do we bring them to the consumer marketplace.
Perfect. Deepak?
Hey, thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me. I'm Deepak Prakash from Vancive Medical Technologies, a division of Avery Dennison. I know the last couple of times I've been here, people say Avery Dennison, not the first name that comes to mind in digital health, but hopefully we're slowly beginning to change that. I'm sitting next to Steve with a big device, and I have in my hand what we're developing, which is the opposite end, hopefully, and getting smaller. So we're developing a line of digital health products that essentially stick to the body. It's something we as a company know to do very well, and combine a whole bunch of sensors for various applications. So we're working with Levi's colleagues there at RAC in Chicago to get a better perspective of patients recovering from injuries as part of their rehab process. Hopefully we can showcase some of that work next year. I'm here.
Perfect. Levi, do you have a video? Or is
I have a few slides that maybe we can put up. So we're from the Center for Bionic Medicine in Chicago, and we're working on developing neural-controlled prosthetics for traditionally for arms, and there's an example here, and also for legs. So there's around a group of 50 of us. You see a lot of great press on how advanced prosthetics are, but in actual fact, this is a patent from 1912. It's probably the most still most common used prosthetic arm. It captures energy from shrugging your shoulders. It's low cost, it's robust, it's reliable, it's lightweight. People love it. The other way that you can control a prosthetic is through neural signals. So these are just electrodes that are placed on the muscles that are remaining after an amputation. So I have electrodes on me and I can control the limb in the same way that you see in the video. Very intuitive, one-to-one mapping. You can do other things like rotate your wrist as well, using some more advanced signal processing. And this has led to some pretty tremendous functional benefits. So this is an amputee using that device to control the limb and pick up a strawberry in this case. So very intuitive. He just thinks about moving his limb, much as you or I would move. Our pattern recognition decoder picks up these signals and allows him to do some just tremendous things that have not been possible before. So a lot of people are working on this. This is not entirely my work. There's a team of around 50. Similarly, this is a really high-level amputee who's controlling 2 arms. He's lost his arms at just above his elbow, and one shoulder is gone as well. So he's controlling his elbow and his wrist and opening and closing the terminal devices. He likes to use hooks because they're very functional for him. This is kind of 10, 15 years of research, but it never really went anywhere. So we formed a startup company called CoApt to translate this to the market. So that gentleman, that was in a research lab. Those were his arms to take home. So I'm one of the founders of that company. So this technology is now transitioning from the laboratory out to patients who need it. And we don't just do arms, we do legs. So this is kind of our bionic leg. We actually do a special surgery called targeted muscle reinnervation at the Rehabilitation Institute of Chicago, where we redirect the nerves. So in this case, the nerves would have went to the muscles that control his ankle. We surgically reroute them onto muscles that are in the hamstring, for example. And now when he just thinks about moving his ankle or his knee, he can control the prosthetic leg. So it's a little different than this bionic leg. It's replacing his entire leg, and he's meant to be used chronically. And then this is just an example of the signals, the muscle signals, what they look like are streaming across the bottom. He's just thinking about walking, standing, climbing stairs. You'll see him sit down, stand up, reposition the prosthesis. So this is kind of still in the laboratory phase. It's still research, but we're looking to do a similar thing, to partner with a technology company to take this to market for the benefit of lower extremity amputees, of which there are 10 times larger population in comparison with upper extremity amputees. So he just thinks about moving his knee and his ankle. Everything happens in real time. It's very intuitive. So that's what we're doing at the Rehabilitation Institute of Chicago in my research group.
Awesome. And Ariel, you represent Muse. You've been here before. Help us understand what that does.
Sure. I also have PowerPoint if it gets up and running. So my name is Ariel Garten. I'm the CEO of InteraXon, and we create brain sensing technologies. So we create technologies, applications, and experiences that help you understand what goes on inside your mind and connect your mind to the world outside of you. One good example is a project that we did at the Olympics that let people control the lights on the CN Tower, Canadian Parliament buildings, and Niagara Falls with their mind from across the country. Now, control is still very, very simple at this stage of the technology, but we can do some interesting things. So here's an example of what EEG used to look like, and this is what EEG looks like with Muse, the brain sensing headband. So this is Muse. There's sensors on the forehead and behind the ears, and it slips on just like a pair of glasses. Then sends your brain information wirelessly to your smartphone or your tablet. The space that we're really interested in right now is the sort of bionic trick of helping you control and understand your own mind, being able to calm the mind to improve your cognitive function, reduce your stress, and help you get more out of every day. As you may or may not realize, the US is the #1 most stressed country in the entire world. They say that 78% of all doctors' visits are due to stress-related illnesses. We're hoping to help people change that somewhat by helping them be able to learn what goes on in their mind and then do exercises to be able to calm their mind. So I'm going to pass this back to you and start the panel.
Great. We also have a video if it would be helpful.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
everybody to go through
Yeah,
that. We do it now or
absolutely.
later.
Do
wanna
you have
that
the
now
video?
for me? It should be up, ready to go. So what we're showing in the video is both of our technologies, just for context, in terms of tools to help people regain the ability to walk or run. The anti-gravity treadmill was how the company was originally created, and that's used all the way from the highest performance athletes. So Kobe Bryant has been rehabbing from an Achilles tendon injury on our anti-gravity treadmill in an unweighted environment, all the way to stroke patients, hip fracture patients, and the bionic leg now enables someone who has significant leg weakness to practice walking again and regain strength when they have
I
significant
feel like
impairment.
the bionic leg has had a great impact on my patients' neuroplasticity and motor learning, particularly motor learning while improving their gait pattern, and neuroplasticity by increasing activation in the primary motor cortex when they're able to do new activities. I've seen a lot of functional benefits when using the bionic leg. I've seen improved quad strength, improved gait pattern by increasing single limb stance on the involved leg, and also better balance. But the physiologic benefits are not the only ones. Emotional benefits are big as well. I've seen patients and their families break down in tears after a successful session when using the bionic leg. Some of the objective differences that he's increased are his ability to take more steps per minute from 24 to 29. He's increased the number of steps he can climb from 0 to 6, and has improved the weight bearing on his left leg, being able to weight shift onto it, increased from 5% up to now 45%.
It's a thing of the future, it's gotta be, because it makes all the difference in the world. Here I am with a broken leg and walking up and down stairs. It just don't happen.
Perfect. So one of the top stories that came out towards the end of last year was sort of the FDA getting involved to some extent with 23andMe. I don't want to get down that path, but I do want to touch on how the FDA is involved with some of these emerging technologies. And Ariel, have you had any experience with that at this point, or is this still too early for that in
Well,
the sense
hopefully nobody from the FDA is in the audience, because we have not had any interactions with the FDA to date. Everybody in my brain sensing space on the consumer level is non-FDA approved. Our device could pass a 510K if we put the effort into doing it in about 6 months, but because we're so busy building technology and algorithms, we haven't paid attention to it.
Perfect. And Levi.
Yeah,
So again, hopefully there's nobody from the FDA here. But if there is, we'd be happy to speak to you and learn how we can comply, because we trust and believe in your standards.
Well, I guess we've taken a little different route. Prosthetics and orthotics, this is classified as an external prosthetic component. It's Class 1 exempt from the FDA's perspective. There is some guidance on electrode connectors, which we satisfy by doing the appropriate testing. So we go through, we hire consultants, we work with them to make sure that we're in compliance. We register, we notify as appropriate. So this has been, we have notified the FDA that we're selling this on their website.
Sure, but in the sense of modifying during surgery, the nerve endings, is that a specific procedure? That's a surgical procedure.
That's a surgical procedure, and then the surgeons, there's a lot of evidence that the targeted reinnervation relieves pain caused by neuroma. So neuroma is scarring of the nerve tissue after an amputation. So there's a body of evidence that suggests that this TMR procedure will treat or eliminate neuroma pain. So the surgeons do that out of the clinical treatment that's best for the patient.
Perfect. And then Deepak, you're already...
We're a medical device company, so
Yeah.
for the record, FDA are friends of ours. So depending on the product and the applications, of course, like she mentioned earlier, some of the consumer lifestyle ones won't be regulated. But we're also bringing out products that are more relevant in the clinical space, especially around ECG, et cetera. So those are already regulated. So.
Sure. And then Steve,
Right, no, and
It's the same
similarly,
deal, yeah.
Yeah, so we have, class 1 and class 2 exempt medical device status for our various products. And we also have some fitness products that aren't regulated because, in fact, we have people who are using our machines for running, just for training purposes, and we have therapists using our machine to treat patients and recover from significant injury or illness. And so sort of the use state dictates to some degree how that's treated. But we work through all of the standard medical device compliance activities, and it's just a part of the business.
Right. So another reason I reference that is just because one of the other stories that came out last year was the FDA approval for Bionic eye. And it was a separate category that I don't know a lot of people are aware of under a humanitarian category that is distinct for those kinds of emerging technologies that really have a potential to be life-altering and maybe don't have the full kind of clinical trial and testing behind them, but recognize the early nature and the early adoption opportunity for those. So that was one of the reasons that I referenced that. And then 23andMe. Help me understand with the application how this accelerates or helps with the recovery process in a medical condition.
So the best way to think about the way that we approach rehabilitation is sort of take the analogy of anything else that you want to learn how to do. If you've got a child who's learning to play the piano, what's the best way to learn to play the piano is to practice playing the piano. Your fingers are moving on the keyboard, and you're driving neuroplasticity, and the brain is rewiring to know exactly where your finger's supposed to go. What's the best way to learn how to walk or to relearn how to walk is to actually practice walking. The challenge is if you've got an injury or if you've got muscle weakness and your body can't support your weight, either because it can't bear the impact force, then you need to unweight in an anti-gravity treadmill, or because the muscles aren't strong enough to hold you. If you've had a stroke and your neuromuscular control is lost and your muscles aren't strong enough to hold your weight, how then do you practice walking? So what we are creating is tools that enable someone who is no longer able to walk to practice the thing that they need to relearn how to do by providing them graduated support. So the bionic leg has adjustable assistance. So we can start by providing a lot of assistance to someone when they are at a very weak point and an early point in their recovery. As they get stronger, we can provide less and less assistance so that they begin to transition to supporting their own weight. We're enabling people to practice the thing that they want to do, whether it's walking or running, or an athlete to keep on running through their injury so that their muscles don't atrophy while they're recovering from an ACL surgery or recovering from any other injury or surgery.
Having had a knee surgery, I can tell you that the recovery process for those is painful. Deepak, you're less involved with sort of the clinical recovery process. So how do you get installed and how do you get implemented into solutions that develop the clinical outcomes that you're looking for?
Yeah, although it's inevitable that sensors will end up in devices like this in the future, what we're working with some of their colleagues is kind of monitoring the patient who's recovering, understanding kind of what their surroundings are and how they're reacting, their lifestyle outside of the rehab setting. So this becomes a big holistic recovery program for them. Because a lot of times you monitor them, a lot of eyes while they're in the clinic, but once they're out of the clinic, kind of you forget them, right? So this is where sensors and monitoring their lifestyle kind of helps understand not only the patient, but also the person providing the care and the recovery to the patient.
The last thing we want to do is engineer products that are of no use to the patient. Yeah. And we work with Deepak, for example, to make sure that this bionic prosthetic leg that we're developing is going to be of use to someone. We need to monitor them outside of the lab in the home environment. The equipment that we have right now, it's not as slick as these products. So we want to work with technology companies that are developing these and maybe use them in an innovative way to monitor recovery. So I think the prosthetics especially leverages developments in other industries because the market size is very small. So if there are other applications, we will leverage them. For example, some of the sensors that are in our devices, they're driven by the cell phone industry. The cost of an inertial measurement unit maybe 15 years ago would be in the thousands of dollars, where now they're in the dollars or cents. So we take advantage of those improvements in other industries. We integrate them with a clinical sense to make them useful for our application.
And Ariel, it seems like stress during a recovery process would be a big component. Have you had any experience with that as yet? Is this an area that you're focused on?
So Muse is coming out into the market in spring of this year. So we haven't done any testing in the recovery process, but we have a number of laboratories who are signed up to do tests with Muse in clinical settings. To date, we really look at how Muse fits into your daily life, and then how Muse can help to improve your health to keep you out of injury and out of a hospital setting.
Yeah. So you referenced sensors twice in the conversation. How are we seeing sensors get included in sort of the next generation products?
So we're actively looking at that in the context of how do we integrate sensors with the therapy or exercise that we're able to generate. So for example, on our anti-gravity treadmill, we can do any number of things associated with enabling someone to relearn walking or relearn running. If you can integrate sensor data into that, you can improve that recovery process. And so we're looking at all of the different sensor technologies, not in the context of how we would replicate it, but rather how that complements the actual delivery of improved therapy or improved recovery or improved exercise. We're in the business of sort of making equipment that enables exercise or that enables recovery and enables walking. There are lots of other folks who are working on ways to sense how well that is happening, and those two are complementary activities. The other thing that we see is that there is an enormous wave, and if you just walk around the exhibit halls, an enormous wave of sensor data that will allow people to track biometrics on their own daily activities and their own daily wellness. But then once you know that you need to fix something, you need to have a comfortable environment in which to do that. So one of the things we're thinking about with our anti-gravity treadmills, how to make it much more widely available to consumers to go into clinics that have them, to use them just for exercise, because people who want to exercise, who have their Fitbit or have their other health monitors that tell them that their blood pressure is going up or they're gaining weight, they need to exercise, but they can't run comfortably. Now there's a solution. They can, in fact, go and run completely pain-free and in a fall-safe environment if they've got some impairment, and do so and really be transformative. So a lot of the sensor stuff, I think, is going to drive demand for new solutions that enable exercise.
And Deepak, you are an actual sensor in that sense. So are you looking at ways in which you can be embedded in the sort of bionic world?
Absolutely. I mean, just look at it. The development here in the last couple of years, it's disrupted pretty much every aspect of lifestyle or clinical applications, and it'll continue to do so. And so we're casting a wide net because this is going to be the way of the future, right? I mean, obviously it'll take a long time for the outcomes to be validated, and companies to operationalize things and monetize, et cetera. All that will happen, but you got to start somewhere. So a lot of these companies are very much at the forefront of that.
Yeah. So I mean, right now we're using accelerometers like that are in your cell phone. For example, if you hold your phone up and you rotate it, it knows the orientation you're holding. We use that sensor directly in the leg to know if you're standing up or sitting down. We measure what the angle of your knee is, what the angle of your ankle is, and we also measure your biopotentials, so your muscle, the intensity of which you're contracting your muscles. We fuse all of that together using automated algorithms to do what we do. So we're using them now. We don't have the resources to develop the sensors themselves. We take advantage of other people's developments, and then we'll integrate it onto our own. We do our own PCB boards and our own engineering, but we don't manufacture the sensors directly. There's not enough hours in the day.
Right. And Ariel?
So we build our own sensors. We build our own dry sensor, EEG, and then we also have a plug-in at the back of the Muse where you can add 2 more EEG sensors or an ECG sensor for full ECG while you do EEG. So we've been having a lot of fun doing sensor fusion, tracking EEG, ECG, all the other data that you get on your phone, so that we can do experiments that are able to tag brain data during different states, and then go back and build more complex algorithms with that tagged sort of view of the total human and their censored profile.
Steve, give us an insight into what you're working on for, this is the beginning of the year, so what's on the roadmap ahead for you for 2014?
Well, so we just launched the Bionic leg last August. So,
Okay.
you know, for 2014, we are in the midst
Okay.
of two things. One is continuing the broadening of our distribution on the anti-gravity treadmill, which is now becoming, you know, will soon emerge in the next couple of years as the standard of care in physical therapy. It is becoming much more widespread in its adoption in physical therapy clinics and is becoming a real staple in orthopedic rehab from orthopedic injury, but also opens up the possibility of weight loss, exercise opportunities, the possibility of geriatric or senior wellness opportunities where a senior who is at some fall risk wants to keep on walking, and we're really driving the expansion of the anti-gravity treadmill into much broader markets than on the bionic leg side. We're in the midst of a product launch and evolutionary product refinement of making it easier to use, making it more effective with broader ranges of users, and ultimately enabling people to recover walking much more dramatically. One of the things that is really heartwarming is we're now starting to get data from our clinics that have the bionic leg that patients that they never thought could recover are now experiencing recovery. There used to be a dogmatic thinking in stroke recovery that if you had a stroke, you would recover for the first 12 or 18 months, and then that was it. That's sort of as much function as you're going to get back. And that's just not true. We're seeing patients who are 6 years, 8 years, 10 years out from a stroke who have meaningfully impaired ability to walk, practice walking with the support of the bionic leg, and because it enables them to practice the thing that they need to relearn how to do, that practice results in walking much faster with much greater stability without the device. So we're in the mode of broadening access much more significantly on both of these technologies.
To the recent product launch.
Right.
Deepak, how about you? What's on the roadmap ahead for the year?
Well, hopefully hitting my numbers for the year. We just had a limited rollout of our first product under the Matria lifestyle brand outside the U.S. So we'll be rolling out in the U.S. shortly here. We also have other products in development, some of which you can see in our booth, South Hall 2. Hopefully we'll advance the development of those in time for CES next year as well.
Perfect.
Yep.
Levi.
So as I said, it took around 10 years to do our upper limb pattern recognition to get it to a product. And we're releasing that. We're making sales now. As far as the leg, we're really doing a lot of research on making our interface to the leg more intuitive to configure. So we want something that you just put on and it works, and that's very difficult to do. So we're trying to make something that's intuitive for a prosthetist, the person who's making the prosthesis, to fit to the patient, and then something that's intuitive for the person to just put on and use. And the other area that we're working on, you showed in the little video, we were working with targeted muscle reinnervation patients for the lower extremity. We're no longer working just with the patients who've had the surgery. We're working with people who've had amputations for maybe 30, 40 years. We're testing them. We want to finish that study up and publish the results this year. So lots going on.
Perfect.
So 2014 is really exciting for us because that's when we start shipping Muse commercially. Up until now, we have been in prototype state, and so I've been having to do things like call clinics that have Muses and say, I need them back. And they say, I don't want to give them to you. We like using them. So now I'm happy to have enough to actually start distributing widely to doctors and clinics who want to be using them, and then to consumers through retail locations. We've had conversations with people like Apple over the last few days, and also online.
Perfect. I meant to ask you during the video, was that Zach?
That is Zach Botter.
Can you share the story of Zach? Because I think that one is
Sure.
pretty interesting.
So Zach, in 2009, he had a motorcycle accident, lost his knee, lost his leg just at his knee. So he still has his entire femur, but the knee joint is gone. Everything below the knee is gone. He happened to have his amputation done in Seattle with a collaborator of ours, Doug Smith. He did the reinnervation surgery and then referred him to Chicago. So we started working with him. So he was kind of our test pilot, we refer to him, that he was the first person who put on our version of the prosthetic leg. We worked with him. We got it to the point where he could walk around the lab very easily. He can go around the hospital. The only thing that's stopping him from walking outside of the hospital is a security guard. He can go. And then 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, he did a fundraiser for the Rehabilitation Institute of Chicago It's called Skyrise, where he actually used that leg to climb 103 stories of the Willis Tower, formerly the Sears Tower, under his own power. I was walking behind him. I had a spare one in the backpack just in case, and he, he did it way faster than I could ever do it. I made him stop and wait for me. So
It's a great story.
It's getting good, and it's getting good enough that he wants to start taking it home. But we're not ready from a safety point yet. But we want to get there in the next 3 to 5 years.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. 2 more quick questions, then I'm going to open it up to the audience, because I know that lunch is queued up in the back and it's well past. But anybody here involved with and working with, one of the keynotes at CES was the CEO of MakerBot. 3D printing is coming into this in a big way. Is anybody here working? I know one of the stories that made national news towards the end of last year was the dad who used a 3D printer to effectively build his son a prosthetic hand. So is 3D printing on the roadmap for you in any way, in the sense of the technology roadmap?
So I'll answer. This is 3D printed. One of our engineers whipped that up in an afternoon, not even, a couple hours. Our cases are 3D printed. If we want to prototype something and show it to a clinician and say, what do you think of the look of this? We'll get it printed. We get parts and components that are going into our own arm that we're developing at the Rehabilitation Institute of Chicago. We get a lot of things 3D printed, so it is changing the way that we engineer, design, and iterate. It's much quicker than it possibly ever was before.
It's the surprising thing. It's always been part of rapid prototyping and product development for a long time, but now kind of the commercial aspects of it is what's taking off. But it's always been part. Pretty much every medical device company, like he mentioned, a lot of the rapid prototyping and iteration, et cetera, happens on the 3D, SLA models.
The benefit now is the printer's in our office.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's right there.
Yeah.
Right, and the lower cost obviously is making it affordable
Yep.
to push in
Yep.
new ways. Last question is relative to cost, and I don't know if anybody has seen this, but I encourage everybody to see the TEDx video that came out late last year of, I think her name is, I want to say Krista Donaldson, who engineered a leg prosthesis, which is shipping now for $80, and that includes profit. So the issue of cost, how is that managed, and is that on the road in the sense of your development? Is that a consideration relative to the clients that you work with, or is that simply something that gets absorbed into the insurance cost?
So it's absolutely a consideration, but it's not a consideration in the context of individual consumers accessing it. So we don't need to be at consumer prices. We are going into clinics. But absolutely, cost drives accessibility within the clinics.
Right.
Because the clinics simply don't have capital budgets to absorb $100,000 devices. And so most of the robotics that have been developed for use to provide patient support have historically been very expensive and have been available in a much smaller set of clinics. Our goal is to get products into the 35,000 rehabilitation clinics and the 50,000 or more assisted living or senior wellness clinics or senior wellness centers where people will need to access support to enable them to continue walking or continue to improve their walking. And in order to access that much larger population, we need to bring costs down, and we've been absolutely focused on doing that.
Yeah. And Deepak?
Absolutely. I mean, when you make devices like we do, it's only going to be effective. It's going to be, at lower cost. That's part of the challenge, right? The space is growing so fast with new sensors, and you want to integrate. Well, none of that comes at low cost right away. So you have to strike that good balance. But I do think a lot of the sensors and accelerometers were pretty expensive, not too long ago. But now they're a lot more reasonable, and a lot of these sensors, other sensors like EEG and ECG, all those will also reduce cost. But you have to balance that with integrating more and more sensors, more and more functionality. So I don't think it'll be truly low cost, but you certainly have to keep that. It's at the forefront.
I don't think that really applies in the sense of Levi, you, but Ariel, this is a consumer product, so,
Sure. So
consumer pricing?
Clinical EEG is $20,000. This is $299.
Wow.
Yeah.
So very real in the sense of kind of a consumer device. And is there a channel anticipated for this where we could
Sure,
go
actually
into...
anybody can pre-order one now at getyourmuse.com,
Okay.
and we'll be shipping in a few months.
And when you start shipping, will that be in Best Buy? Will it be in Target, or how?
So as a consumer product, you don't want to go into Best Buy and Target first off. That's consumer death. So primarily online and then in larger retail channels over time.
Got it. So I can't see, are there any...
And one other
yeah,
thought on
absolutely.
accessibility from a consumer perspective. One of the things we are absolutely working on is not so much having the products. There aren't that many people who are going to buy an anti-gravity treadmill for their home.
Right.
Although, candidly, my father has walking issues, and he's got one in his home and has dramatically improved walking. And it really makes a huge difference. But what we are driving is consumer accessibility. So in the same way that a consumer would pay to go into a fitness club, we are now setting up systems with the physical therapy clinics that have our anti-gravity treadmills to be able to sell time on the anti-gravity treadmill, or to be able to sell memberships so people can go in and run as often as they want. And in the same way, in the context of wanting to get access. If you want to experience running like you did when you were 18 or when you had no pain, best way to do it, go to AlterG.com, go to our zip code locator, and find an anti-gravity treadmill near you. There are 1,500 of them around the country. And I injured my knee 25 years ago, swore I would never run again, because if I run a few hundred yards, it hurts. I now run routinely on our machine, unweighted, to the point where my knee doesn't hurt at all. And it's amazing to be able to run again.
I will be looking for the zip code. So, I can't see any questions. Yeah.
We have one over here.
Okay.
I think there was a question.
Hi, Hi, I'm Richard Pitts. I'm a physician and a PhD researcher. I have a question regarding the total leg replacement. How do you handle proprioception feedback for the wearer of your device?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Proprioceptive feedback is, we can't restore it. So the user relies on visual information. They look at their foot. They don't know where it is in space. They have some, they call it extended physiological proprioception. That it's like if you hold a tennis racket, you know where the end is in space. They have that to some extent, but it's a problem. And a lot of people are working on it, but there's no clear path to incorporating that into a prosthesis just yet. It's going to happen. It'll just take time.
Anybody else?
Does anyone else have any questions? The Bionic Man?
Bionic Man?
Oh, I see one over there. Sorry. Hold on.
Yeah, I'm from China. My question is, people can walk with the leg. I'm wondering when they can run or jump with the leg.
With our leg? Or with...
Are you talking about the orthotic or his replacement leg?
Both? Okay, I'll start.
What do you take?
In general.
I want you to jump, I guess.
So the leg is not designed to run. That being said, there are emergency situations, like if your child is running across the street or if there's a bus coming, you have to be able to take a few quick steps. So it's designed mechanically to do that. We and our collaborators have developed algorithms that allow us to do that. But it's not meant to be running. Like, you'd be much better off running on a spring than this bionic leg. It's meant to help people stand up, walk up a few stairs, walk with less energy.
It'll take me a second to turn this on, but I'll sort of give you a quick demonstration. The speed that this responds is sufficient to help someone learn to walk, but it is not sufficient to help someone think about running. That's it'll just take a second to power up, but if someone is able to walk or run, this is not the right device for them. This is a device for someone who's not able to support their own weight, who is recovering from a stroke or recovering from a hip fracture, or has significant muscle atrophy due to age-related weakness, and it simply wouldn't respond fast enough. If we optimized it to respond fast enough for runners, then it's not going to be useful for someone who is a stroke patient. So just, if I put it into auto mode, it's going to help lift me up, and it's going to help me take steps. But you can hear as the motor is moving, it's not going to respond fast enough if I'm walking at full speed. So if I'm walking normally, the motor actually has some difficulty keeping up.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Any other questions? One more. Jill, is there a mic?
I'm a physician. I am interested about the EEG device. Its major function is to detect the stress status. I want to know it can be divided to the person is happiness, angry, sad, or other condition, and we can point to her condition to some suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, so I will repeat the question that I think I heard, which is that the device can currently measure your level of stress or calm. It actually measures how active your mind is or how quiet your mind is. And the question was, when can we learn if you are happy, excited, mad, et cetera, and when can we use that to, as a part of therapy? With a 4-channel EEG, you can't measure if somebody is happy, mad, et cetera, but you can begin to get some valence information using hemispheric specialization of whether there is a positive valence or a negative valence. So if somebody's watching a sad movie or a happy movie at that moment, I can tell using EEG. We can use the methodology of teaching somebody to calm and quiet their mind to help them understand their emotional state more effectively without actually reading their EEG. So using techniques like mindfulness and meditation that increase your emotional intelligence, once you're able to understand and manage the thoughts in your mind, you can then have all the downstream benefits of understanding your emotional state and being able to move through life more effectively with it.
Last year, I didn't have a chance to use your product, but I will this year. I'm committed to it.
You can
but
come
I did
demo.
get to use a different one, and it is a little eerie when you're able to control devices simply with your mind, and that is starting to emerge. So we're on the roadmap, and that's exciting stuff. So thanks to the panel for a great presentation.